Hi guys, Luther here from Luther's Woodworking. I was asked a couple times to do a video on making the frames for my pictures that I scroll saw. They're pretty easy to make. I'm really happy with the ones I've made in the past. Here's a picture that I framed up a while back. They actually turn out really nice. So we'll just quick go through a video on making that frame. They're really not that hard, and they're really not that fancy either. I'm not a professional frame maker or anything like that, so we'll just do the best we can here. Now, the pictures that I cut, they're actually cut using 1/4-inch plywood. The actual picture that's cut is made out of 1/4-inch, and then the backing is 1/4-inch, and then when I glue the two together, you got a 1/2-inch thick picture. And that's what this is right here. It's a 1/2-inch thick, nice solid picture. One thing you want to make sure before you start making the frame for this is you want to make sure that this picture is squared up really is the best you can, because the better it's squared, the easier it is to make that frame for it. So we'll get started here. Now, once I got the picture all cut out, glued together, painted, whatever I'm going to do with it, and it's all squared up, the first thing I'm going to do is measure across the picture and down the side, because you're going to need the top rails, bottom rails, and the two sides. And so what I do is I measure across, and this is basically 16 inches. It's a little under 16 inches, but you got to remember when you cut a frame, you're cutting the 45s, so you need extra long piece to get that 45 cut. And the way I do it is I'll just measure my picture, and this one's just under 16 across the top. So I'll just go 16 inches, and then I'll add 3 inches to the length of my rail that I'm going to cut, because you want to make sure you got enough room to cut that 45 on each side. So that'll be two 19-inch pieces for the top and bottom. And then I'll measure down the side right here. You can see right here, I'll get this. I'll measure down the side, and this is 17 inches. So I'll need 2 pieces at 20, because I'm going to add 3 inches so I make sure I got enough room to cut that 45. So I need 2 pieces at 19 and 2 pieces at 20 just to start out with. And that is what I did ahead of time. I cut 2 pieces here. There's 2 pieces here at 19, and there's 2 pieces here at 20. And let me just say, the wood I use for my frame is just a select pine. It's a higher quality pine. It doesn't have the knots or imperfections in it, so it's easy to work with. A little bit more pricey, but it works well for these frames. You can use anything you want, really. And then on my frames, this is 1.5 inch wide material. I also do frames with 2.5 inch wide material. Now, you got to remember, if you're using 2.5 inch wide material, you just multiply 2.5 by 2, and that's 5. So instead of adding 3 to your length, you'd add 5 inches to your length, because you're dealing with a wider a board for your frame. So just keep that in mind whatever you're going to use. So once you got your pieces cut, it'll be time to put your rabbet joint in so your picture can sit down in your frame. And for the rabbet joint, now because I'm using 1/2 inch, my picture is 1/2 inch. Because my picture is 1/2 inch thick, you want your rabbet joint to be at least 1/2 inch deep, because you want your picture to sit flush in the back. If you can see this, you want your picture to sit flush in the back when you put that picture in your frame. And then also, so you'd be setting your blade at your table saw 1/2 inch to make that cut. And then you'll also see that I have a 1/2 inch overlap actually on the picture itself. It's overlapping the picture, 1/2 inch. I'll explain a little bit more about that, but you go 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. That's how I did it, and I'll explain a reason why I did that. But we'll go over to the table saw, because I cut all my rabbits on the table saw, and they actually turn out really nice every time you cut them, and I'll show you how to set that up. So let's head over to the table saw, and we'll get starting to cut these rabbits. Okay, at the table saw here. Now, one thing you're going to need to do to make these rabbits, what I did is I made a little jig here for setting up my fence and my blade. Because you want your rabbit, like I said before, you want it 1/2 inch deep. So the first thing you want to do is set your blade at a 1/2 inch height, because you want your blade to cut a 1/2 inch for that rabbit. Now, when you first start out to make this jig, you're going to have to measure and get a 1/2 inch, this blade up exactly a 1/2 inch height. I have a jig here with a groove in it, and this groove is exactly a 1/2 inch deep. So I'll just take this here, and I'll set that groove in that blade, and you can see here the blade's up too high. I'll just run my blade down. I run my blade down until that piece runs in there really nice without moving the blade. I'll just keep on trying it until it doesn't move that blade. Should be about like that there. And then another thing, I had said that there's a 1/2 inch overlap on my picture. So once you get your blade set at 1/2 inch, move your fence over, and you want your fence a 1/2 inch, including the blade. A 1/2 inch from the fence to the outside edge of your blade here. Once you got that, you can run a piece of wood through here, and you can do a couple test cuts. But see how I got this sample piece here? It sets up against here. Now it's a little tight. I'm just gonna, if I take this here, this board moves across here really nice. So I know that blade is a 1/2 inch up, and the table saw fence is exactly where I need to have it. Now, you might have to do a couple measurements to make this jig to do that. Because once I have this, then just take a piece of scrap wood like this here, run it through, make a jig like this with one groove in it. Once you got that jig made with that one groove that's a 1/2 inch deep, now I can take my saw and I can move my blade. Let's say you want to make a frame, you come over here. All you got to do is take your jig, your little sample piece right here, run that down, get that so it's a height, set it right there, bring your fence over. So you got the perfect, so it lines up nice. Now you got your table saw all set to make that rabbit joint, and you didn't even have to use a tape measure to do all this measuring. So make yourself one of these blocks with a groove in like this here, and anytime you want to make a frame, you just gotta set it in there, lift your blade up or down, move your fence over, and you got this all set, and now you're ready to cut your rabbit joint. So we'll set them aside. Now you got your rails here. We're going to cut some rabbit joints in these rails that we cut. All you're going to do is we're going to make the first cut, we're going to run it straight through. And let me get my push block here. All right, we're going to run this board straight through for the first cut. Once you run that through the first cut, just take it and turn it and you can see, and put it up on the edge. You can see the cut mark right here. Put that cut mark against the fence and down towards the table. And now you're going to set the board up on its edge, and you're going to run it through one more time. And now you have the perfect rabbit joint right here. There's really nothing even to clean out in this groove. It's perfect. Every time it's perfect. For me, it's been working really well. So now you got your first rabbit joint cut in your one rail. And you're going to do that to all four of these rails. And here's the piece that you cut out from that that rabbit joint right here. Here's the piece you cut out. So we're going to do that to all four of them. Turn it, flip it up on its side. And there you got another one right here. Now you gotta run your other ones in. Turn it, flip it up on the side, run it through again. And there you got another rabbit joint. One more. On the side. Now you have all your rabbit joints cut. They're perfect. There's not even anything to clean out in these joints. Once you got this all set up to cut these rabbit joints. And if you're making a whole bunch of frames, you only got to set this up one time and you can cut as many frames as you want. Just remember, make yourself a setup block like this with one groove in it. You can always set your table saw up to make that rabbit joint. So once you get your rabbit joints cut, we're going to go back over to the workbench. We got a couple more measurements we got to do to get the 45s cut on these rails. Okay, back at the bench here. Now, once you have all your rabbits cut in your rail pieces, the next thing we're going to do is cut the 45s on it. And you have to do a little measuring on your picture here. First, you're going to, the two rails on the top right here, first you're going to measure your picture across. Now, when we first cut these rails, we measured across, added 3. Now, this is the most important measurement of making the picture frames. It's the actual inside, the inside measurement of your rail. From this corner here to this corner here. That's most important. Because you want your picture to set in your frame, but you don't want it to have a whole bunch of moving around. So when I go here and I measure across here on the top, I come up with 15 7/8. That's the actual measurement across the top of my picture. 15 7/8. So write that measurement down because you're going to need that. And then over here, if you measure the length, let me get up here, measure the length of your picture, it comes up with 16 15/16. So you kind of want to measure, write that measurement down. Whatever that actual length of your picture and the width of your picture. Because you're going to use that to set up the jig for cutting these 45-degree angles. So we will head over to the, I'll get a few things set up and then we'll go over the table saw and I'll show you the jig I use for cutting these 45-degree angles. Okay, here at the table saw. Now, here's the jig that I use for cutting 45-degree angles on these frames. I'll put a link below in the description on the video that showed me how to make this jig. The gentleman that has the video does a real good job explaining how to make this jig and how it works and all that stuff. I'm not going to take credit for this jig. He came up with it supposedly or whatever, but he's got the video. I'll put the link below in the description. But it's basically, you know, a plywood piece with a framing square attached to it at a 45-degree angle to your blade. And he'll show you how to set that all up on your saw, because every saw is different. It's made to slide in the grooves of your table saw, and every table saw is different, so you're going to have to make it to fit your table saw. But actually cutting the frame, now here are the pieces we got our rabbets cut into. In this frame, let me just back up here a minute. This frame is made to slide in, like I said. It slides in on your table saw grooves. Now my table saw has the T-slot grooves, so I made it so it doesn't pop out. I can't lift it out unless I pull it all the way back. It just depends on the type of saw you have. But the first thing you want to do, and the way this jig is made, you got your rabbet joint here. It's made, you can put the rail up against your frame, your square right here, and then just slide it through the blade. Now, one thing you want to make sure is if the blade's high enough to cut through the thickness of wood you're using for your frame. So right here it is thick enough. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut your 45-degree angle on your piece, your first angle. And all I do is just set it on the jig right here, kind of line it up with the blade right here, and cut your 45. So let's do that first, and then we'll talk about the rest of it. Okay, so there's your first 45-degree angle right there. Now, remember before I had mentioned that the top of my picture is 15 7/8 inches. Obviously, you want your picture to fit in your frame, but you don't want to have a whole bunch of slop up or down, left or right. So over here on the jig, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there, I have a slide stop on this jig. And it slides along. It's got a groove. You can see it, but it's got a groove in it. And this is a 45-degree angle. It slides in that framing square right there, right along it. And you can adjust that to different measurements along your square. And I said our picture is 15 7/8 inches across the top. So you want this rail, the inside measurements, to be 15 7/8. So we're going to take this down here, and we're going to find 15 7/8. Now, I want to just say this because I just happened to figure this out this morning. When you make this jig and you buy your framing square to put on this jig, on my square, the top measurements here, it's divided into 12ths. And I just happened to figure that out, and I didn't notice that before. I'll probably end up making another jig, but it's kind of hard to come up with 7/8 because you don't have 1/8 markings because it's divided into 12ths. So when you buy your framing square, make sure it's divided into at least 1/8, maybe 1/16 would be better, because then you can accurately move this slide to whatever measurement you want. So we're going to go down 15 7/8. So because mine's divided into 12ths, I got to do a little guesswork here to get 15 7/8. So we're just going to try to make this work here. There's about 15 7/8 right there. So once you cut your first 45 on your rail, and you set your gauge to your top measurement of your pitcher, all you do is take that, bring it around, put it up against your framing square like that there, the rabbet joint right up against it, and now you just run that through. Now, this would be the perfect rail for the top of your pitcher, but you need 2 of them. So now that you got this set already for that size, the rail, that length, now all you do is just take your next piece, cut your first 45, and then we're going to bring it around and cut the other one because you already got this set, so it'll be exactly the same as this one. So now, this piece here and this piece here is going to be exactly the same size. And they are exactly the same size. And this will be for the top and bottom of my pitcher. Now, we got to do the bottom, the sides of my pitcher, which I had said is 16 and 15/16. So you're going to take your device over here, and you're going to move that up to 15/16. And because my square is divided into 12ths, that makes things harder to figure out, but we should be able to figure this out. Okay. Sixteenths. And then go like that, and you take your rail. You're going to cut your first 45-degree on one end. And then you're going to move it over here and cut your next 45. And you're going to do the same thing with your other one. Alright, so you got them 2 pieces that are exactly the same length. So now you have your rails for your pitcher frame. And because we cut the pieces a little longer, so you had room to cut that 45, you really don't end up with a whole bunch of scrap. There's just a little bit left over. So you're not wasting a lot of wood. So once you got these cut at the 45s, we're going to head back over to the bench and kind of get things clamped up a little bit. All right, we are back at the workbench here. We got our rails cut, got the rabbets in, got the 45 degrees cut on the rails. Like I said, that inside measurement is the most important measurement of making the frame. What I do is I'll set the frame up upside down on my workbench here, and I'll put it together like this here, kind of a dry fit like this. And then I'll just take my pitcher, and I know this is upside down, but I'll just take my pitcher and I'll set it in here and kind of push things together like this. Get everything squared up. And you can see here, the pitcher fits really pretty nice. There's not a lot of slop on the sides. So it actually fits pretty good. You want to dry fit it first, because if for some reason you need to recut one of these rails to make it smaller, or maybe you made the mistake and made it too short or something, you want to make sure that you dry fit it like this first, just to make sure everything is going to fit good, because once you glue it, you can't fix it. So it looks like it's going to fit pretty nice, so we'll just take this apart like this here. We'll take the picture out of it. And now we're ready to actually glue it together, but we're going to glue it together. We're going to glue it with the top facing up. And the reason why you do that is because when you go to glue this together, you want to be able to see these joints. You want to make sure that these joints are nice and tight. And the way to do that is to glue it with the frame facing up. So let me just remove this cloth out of the way here. And I'll show you what we're going to do. We'll lay our pictures out, frame out here on the workbench. And we're going to kind of stick it together. Make sure you have the right pieces. Alright, so there's our frame. We know our picture fits in it, so we're going to glue this together. Now, the clamp I use for gluing these together is this belt clamp. You can get these on Amazon. I've tried several other types of clamps. They're kind of clumsy and stuff. This one seems to work really nice. I can do it myself with no help. And it makes a perfectly nice square frame. So I got one right here. It's just got these couple straps. We just unwind it here. And you're just going to pull. It's got these corner pieces that fit on the. And you want to make sure your handle here is screwed all the way loose, so you got room to tighten it up. You just pull these out like this here. You're going to put this one right here. You're going to set, I don't know if you can see, put the corner one right here. You're going to come up here and put another corner one. You might have to pull this out further to get more room. And then you're going to pull this other corner one over here. Once you got your corner pieces all set in here, you got your frame sitting there. You're just going to take, now this particular clamp has got two locking levers right here. Just lock up one side, and then you'll just have to pull the other side tight. So we're just going to come over here and just lock up this one side. And now you can come over here. Let me see if you can see this. I got this side here locked up. Now you can come over here and pull this one just so it's kind of snug a little bit, and lock that up. Because turning this handle is what's going to actually tighten this all up. But before you do that, we're going to unlock this again, because I'm kind of jumping ahead. But anyway, that's how you set it up. Before you do that, you just want to loosen it up just a little bit, because we got to put some glue in here. So you just want to get things loosened up. We're going to put some glue on this frame. Move the camera here so you can see. And I just use regular wood glue. Nothing fancy. And And you're going to get glue to squeeze out, but that's just normal. Put enough glue on each corner. Once you got the glue on each corner, go ahead and get your corners set again on your frame. Tighten up that one lock on one side. And pull the other strap just so it's a little tight. And lock that one down. Now, all you got to do is turn this handle. And I'm going to move the camera right here. All you got to do is turn this handle. And as you turn this handle, that's going to tighten up that frame. You're going to get glue that squeezes out. Just wipe that off. The reason why I do this with the top of the frame, like I said before, the top of the frame sitting up, is because I can see these 45 degrees corners. I can see if they're getting nice and tight. The back, if for some reason the back of this frame does not clamp tight, a little bit area does not clamp tight, you can always adjust that. Now another thing I want to mention too, I'm going to loosen this up a little bit. These corners, these inside corners right here, you want to make sure they're lined up the best you can get, because you're going to see that in your frame once it's glued together. So you want to make sure the inside corners are lined up the best you can get. They should line up perfect. Right there. Once they're lined up, we're just going to tighten this back up again. And you just keep on turning this handle. You can see right here. I'm turning this handle. Just keep on turning this handle, and you're going to see that this is going to tighten up really nice. A little bit more glue squeezing out, but that's okay because we're going to do a lot of sanding on this. But you can see that these 45s are nice and tight. Let me move the camera over here a little bit. You can see these 45s are nice and tight. And that's what you want. Make sure everything's sitting down flat. So now, all we have to do now is just let this dry for a couple hours. Make sure, if you do this on your workbench, that you clean up any glue that might come through the back. I usually don't like to lift this up when this is clamped because it might come apart. So I just kind of wipe up any glue because you don't want your frame to get glued to your workbench. So once you got that, we're just going to let this set and dry for a couple of hours, and we'll be back to finish her up. So, okay, guys, we are back at the bench here. I took the clamp off this frame I had glued up for a couple hours. You can see here that the front joints here are nice and tight. It glued up really nice. Even the back, even if you look at the back here, they glued up nice and tight here. So it's looking pretty good. I checked it for squareness. It's all real nice and square as far as the frame itself. It's nice and square all the way around. So that turned out. What I'm going to do next is you just flip it over right here. On these inside corners, some of the glue is going to squeeze out because we had it the other way when it was gluing it. So all you got to do on that is the inside corners, just take yourself a chisel and just clean out these inside corners just a little bit. So your picture, you want your picture to sit down in this frame nice and flat. You don't want to have any gobs of glue on this rabbit. So you just want to clean that up a little bit because we're going to do a lot of sanding yet on this frame. But just clean up these pieces of glue right here that might be on the frame. So we'll just do that. Okay, once you got the glue cleaned out from that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut these slots for these splines that go in the corners. They kind of reinforce the corner, makes the frame nice and strong. It strengthens that frame up so it's not going to bust apart on the 45. I do have a jig for cutting them slots for the splines, so we're going to do that before we sand anything. That way we can get them put in and sand it all at once, one time. So we're going to move over to the table saw and get them cut. Okay, here at the table saw, there's a jig that I use for cutting them splines. Now the same person that made the jig for cutting the 45-degree angles on the frame, the same guy made this jig for cutting the splines. I'll put a link below in the description to get this jig. He'll explain how to make this jig. It is made to slide over your fence or your table saw and just slide like this here. Because everybody's got a different type of table saw and different fences on it, you're going to have to make this jig fit on your saw. But it's a pretty slick jig. It works really nice. So, like I said, I'll put a link in the description for that. So, you got to cut the slots in for the splines. Now, what I use for the splines is just this 1/8" Baltic birch plywood. I cut it at 1-inch strips, and then that's what I'm going to use for the splines. So, first thing we're going to do is you got to make sure your blade is set up high enough to cut the depth for your spline. Let me just grab a pencil here. So what I'm going to do is just take my 1-inch and I'm just going to lay it on my frame right here. I'm just going to draw a line across like this here. You can see right here, I just have a line across like this here. I'm just going to sit this in the jig because your frame is made to sit in the jig like this here and come down, and you got these clamps that hold it in right here. So you want to move your fence over and slide your jig next to your blade. I'm just going to raise my blade up just so it comes right around where that mark is. So I got it deep enough to cut for that 1-inch spline that I'm going to put in. Once you got the blade to the height, take this back, move your jig out of the way, and then bring it back because you want to cut that slot right in the middle of your frame. So you're going to have to line your fence up and just kind of eye it up. Let me get a light on over here so I can see. You're just going to line this up so it cuts the middle of that frame. I'm just kind of eyeing that so it cuts in the middle of that frame. I think we're good right there. So that blade is going to come and it's going to cut up 1 inch in the middle of that frame. And you're going to do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So we'll just cut this first one. Let me just take this off here. I'll show you how that looks. We have that cut right there for that spline to go in that piece for your frame. We're just going to move it to the next corner, clamp it down. And you might want to hold it a little bit if you want. Push it across, and we'll do it again. And they're going to do that 4 times. And that is basically all there is to it. This jig really works nice. And it cuts that groove right down the middle of your frame, no problem. So now we're just going to head over to the workbench, get them glued in. And you can see that didn't take me very long at all. It's a very quick procedure to cut that slot in there. So let's head over to the workbench and we'll get these splines glued in. All right, back at the workbench here. Like I said, I used a strip of 1-inch Baltic birch. It's an 1/8 inch thick. I cut it 1 inch wide, and we're going to stick that in the corners here for the splines. Let me just move my camera here just a little bit so you can see how I do this. I do it right on my knee right here, and I got the corner of my frame right here with the slot, basically. And what I did too, I ran a palm sander across that 1-inch strip on both sides, just to kind of make it a little bit thinner. I don't know how it worked, but it might help putting it in the groove here a little bit, because it might be a little bit tinier, thicker than your blade on your table saw, but it does go in. So basically all I do is just get some glue on here. You don't need a lot of glue, because these ain't going nowhere. I just take it right here, get it started, and then we're just going to pound it down. And you want to make sure that it's completely down. And then some of the glue is going to squeeze out. You want to get that cleaned up just a little bit, because we're going to cut the excess wood off. But I want to clean the glue up as I go, because I can see if I got the spline all the way down as far as I need to go in the frame. And it looks like I do. So what I do is I just turn it over to the next corner. I'm going to put a little more glue right here. And just get the other one put down inside there. And then clean up any glue that might come out, because then you can see exactly how far that spline is down inside that. And that one looks pretty good. So we'll go to the next. Stick a little glue on there. All right, so we have them pieces. Let me move the camera back up here. We have them pieces all put in there. So we're going to have to head over to the bandsaw and cut off these pieces, and then we can do some sanding. So we'll head over that way and get that done. Okay, here we are at the bandsaw. I'm just gonna cut this excess wood off. Gotta be careful not to cut your flame, but we're just gonna go along here and cut this excess wood off. There's all the excess wood to cut off. Now we're going to move over to the belt sander that I use to just clean up them corners. It's a lot easier to use the belt sander over here. I'll just move my camera. I got a big belt sander right here, and I got this square. It's squared to the belt with this board. We're just going to run these. Clean them corners up. That cleans them corners up really nice. The corners are all nice and flush and clean, so now we'll just head back over. I'm going to sand this. I want to sand this all up. You want to take your palm sander and sand the top, the back, sand this all up, stickers and all that stuff, and then we'll be back at the workbench to get this all together. Okay, guys, we are back here at the workbench here. I got my frame all sanded up here. Looks pretty nice. Here's the picture we're going to frame. If you set the frame right on there like this here, it actually fits really nice. There's hardly any movement up and down. Sits in there really nice. I'm not sure if I'm going to stain this frame or paint it, but you can do anything you want with it. One thing I want to talk about, though, earlier in the video, I showed me putting in these splines in the corners, and you seen me do it on my knee, and I used a hammer to pound them splines in the corner. They fit really tight, and what I said I was using was 1/8" Baltic birch pieces, and I would cut them in 1-inch strips and cut little pieces, and then I would stick them in the corner. But I had to pound them in to make them get all the way down. I come up with something a little better, and it might work a lot easier because I did have a little problem with this frame because they went in so tight. So I thought, well, how about if I cut 1-inch strips of Baltic birch, and these are supposedly 1/8". My blade on my saw is a little thinner than 1/8", so when I cut the spline on the corners, trying to pound this 1/8" spline in there, it was really hard to do. So I took a strip and I sanded it on both sides with my palm sander. Just kept on going over it and over it, flip it, went over and over with my palm sander. And I did this several times, and I got it down it's probably hard to see, but it's thinner than this 1/8 inch original piece. And here is the setup block I use for my blade. And here's the blade kerf that's cut into the block. If you take this piece that I sanded down, now this would be the same as cutting the corner to put the spline in. So if you take this piece I sanded down and I just set it in that slot, it sets right in. Really easy. It goes in really easy and comes out. So I'm thinking that when I make these picture frames, I'm going to cut the 1-inch strips of Baltic birch, 1/8 inch. And I'm going to take my palm sander and I'm going to sand these down and just keep on sanding them down and use this this setup jig right here as a test to see how they fit in there. So that way, when I go to put these corner splines in on these picture frames, they should just I should be able to just put some glue right here, slide them in. I don't have to use the hammer. You're not putting any pressure or anything on this corner of this frame because it may break or come apart. And it should glue right in there really nice. So I'm going to do that from now on. I would suggest doing that. If you come up with a better idea, let me know. But it's hard to buy lumber thinner than an 1/8 inch. But it doesn't take long to sand this down. So I think that's what I'm going to do from now on. So that probably is going to fix that problem. So just to go over a few things that I did on this video, I just want to touch on a few things. Make sure when you cut your picture out, one thing you want to do is make sure that your picture is square. So go around, make sure your picture is all square, 90 degrees, because it's going to make a big difference on making your frame. Then, don't forget to cut your pieces longer so you got room to cut that 45-degree angle. I use 1.5 stock on this one, so I take 1.5, I multiply it by 2, that's 3 inches. I add 3 inches. If you're going to use wider stock, I just take the width of the stock, multiply it by 2, and add that length, and you should be long enough. Another thing, make yourself a setup block. That way you can just go to your table saw, set this on the blade, move the fence over here, get the blade set at the height, 1/2 inch, move your fence over here. Now, I say 1/2 inch. I made this 1/2 inch deep. Let me show you over here, this rabbet joint. I made this 1/2 inch deep and 1/2 inch overlap on my picture. You don't have to have that. You can have it as deep or the overlap is whatever you want to have. But just remember, if these two measurements aren't the same, you're going to have to readjust your blade and fence to make that second cut. So I kept it 1/2 inch deep because my pictures are 1/2 inch thick. And I went 1/2 inch overlap because then I didn't have to move my blade or my fence. I could just do the first cut, do the second cut, and I would have my rabbit. So just keep that in mind. If you want to do a different size of rabbit or different measurements, you're going to have to come up with something different. I showed you how I do it using a 1/2 inch rabbit. So I think that's pretty much of this video. I hope this video helped. Like I said, these are not perfect frames. They do have imperfections here and there. I'm not a professional frame maker, but that's it. Basically all the ones I've made turn out pretty nice. Sometimes if I have a frame and something happened to it or there's something on it I really don't like, I'll end up painting it. I'll paint it a darker color or do something to where it'll hide maybe some imperfection in the frame. That's an idea. So give it a try. Check them links out below in my description for the frame jig and the jig for cutting the splines. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell and give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Like I said, I hope the video helps. So I think that's it. Got any comments or questions? Shoot them at me. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So we'll see you guys on the next video.